Alright, with all the holes and hardware cleaned up, I'm now going to start working on the top. So what I'm going to do is get some sealant compound and apply it to the gasket. That's it inside of there. Now I don't know if you're supposed to do this or not, but I always do just for safe measures. You don't need very much, just a nice thin little coating. So just brush them on there, wipe it around a little bit. And it's pretty much all you need to do for that. Now that hole and this hole right there are where the water pickup's from. So it's going to line that inside like so. Now on my gloves, I still have some of the sealing compound. I'm going to rub it on the base inside of here, so should this ever need to come back off, it shouldn't give us any troubles. Just kind of a anti-seize or anti-stick, if you will. Now I'm going to slide this into the spot, making sure the gasket's aligning with the holes in this. You can also put a screw down inside of there, get everything nice and aligned. And that's sitting where it needs to be. Now what I'm going to do is wipe off the junk off my gloves. Going to get some gear oil. I just pour some into a little bucket here. Let me show you. And all I do is stick my hand in there, or if I want to grease an entire part, I dump it in there. So, it doesn't need very much. You just want to lube it up before you slide it in. So rub it on there. And drop the drive shaft through the seal and into where it needs to go. If you notice that twisted, I'm going to have a lot of that happening here. Let's wipe the oil off my gloves. Now there's something I like to do that the service manual doesn't call out for. Now if you don't do this, there's a very good chance the water pump won't actually pump. So what I'm going to do is get some black silicone and put a thin layer across the top of this and on the top of the water pump plate, just to make sure it all nice and seals okay. Now this needs very, very little. Then just kind of spread her around there. Put a little more on there in some of my spots. Now there's a little notch there, a little notch there, so this is going to go on like so. Now I'm going to put some on the water pump face here. And just kind of spread it around also. And we'll set this off to the side. When we put the water pump and the impeller housing on, you need to twist the drive shaft. When you do that, all of your alignment here may kind of go out of whack. So what I like to do is put a screw in through the bottom. And what that'll do is hold everything in one spot. So now what I need to do is rotate the drive shaft, but the problem with that is the drive shaft is tapered. If it goes in too far, you won't be able to spin it by hand. So what I'm going to do, back the drive shaft out a little bit, and put a socket onto the bottom side of there. That'll keep the drive shaft from seating too far and still give me the chance to spin the drive shaft as I need to. See, rotates just fine. So I'm going to put my pin back inside that little hole. Had to get my new impeller. Install it down on top of the drive shaft on that little keyway or pin. And there we go. Now you gotta get some triple guard grease or any grease. Oil would probably do it. Just give a very thin light coating on the inside of the impeller. That'll make sure no fins or ribs or anything get damaged as we're putting it on. And that's all it needs. I'll wipe the grease off my glove. Water pickup tube goes on this side. Going to install it like so. We're going to rotate the drive shaft clockwise while pushing this down. You can also just rotate this guy. And our water pump is installed. I'm going to put some anti-seize on the base of the screws here. So, should it ever need to come out, it won't be an issue. I already have a screw in this hole holding everything together, so I'm going to do that one last. But if you can notice how easy those go in now that all the holes are tapped. It's one of the reasons I really like tapping everything. It takes a little while, granted, but it's a pretty good idea to do it. As you can see, they all just go straight down. And I've put anti-seize on every screw. Let's tighten them all down. You don't want to go across, you want to kind of bolt it on as if it were a car tire to make sure it all gets nice and evenly distributed here. Alright, so our water pump's on. Now we're going to install all the gears. Now before I forget, I'm going to put the O-ring back on your pivot pin. So I'm going to show you how to do the pivot pin. I don't think you're going to be able to tell in the video. But as we align this down, we need to put the pivot pin inside, which runs through there. Now that I have the drive shaft installed, I can't use it on the workbench, so I have it installed on the lower unit holding fixture. Because of that, it's going to get a little tricky to use the camera and do everything at the same time, so you're going to have to bear with me. So next step we're going to do is install our shift rod. So this has these detent notches, which need to align with the detent spring. So it's going to go install like so. What you do is feel around down inside of there, get it started into the bushing, force it over and align it into the detent springs. Now this little clip here gets a little sharp, so you don't want to push too hard on there, but you can get a hammer or something and get it started and push it in the rest of the way. Again, sorry for the shake. I have it suspended above the bench here. So I'm not going to force it all the way to the first notch. Well, apparently I am. Let's hope the gears don't get in the way there. Now you want to make no dry assemblies. So when I install the pinion, I'm going to dip it in that little bucket of oil I showed you earlier, just to make sure everything's going to be nice and lubed up. And I'm going to sprinkle some in the gears. We've already done that, so I'm not going to show you, but don't forget to install your pinion like I did numerous times. It'll help you out in a little bit. Alright, now we need some Evinrude Sealing Compound M. Now, we're not going to use M because it's expensive and I don't have any. We're going to use Permatex number 2 instead. I've used gasket sealant M, I've used Permatex, I've just put gasket sealing compound down there. Never had any problems using anything. I don't think you're actually going to need to go out and spend the money for the sealant M. You can pretty much just use what you have, and like I said, I've never run into any issues. The Permatex number 2 is pretty expensive stuff, but probably because it's worth it. Alright, so we got some Permatex number 2 applied there. Now we're going to put in our gear set. So there's a pin right here, which needs to align with the slot in the gear right there. So what I'm going to do is get a Sharpie and mark the opposite side so I know exactly where that slot is and needs to go. For the housing in the back, that one's actually a lot easier. If you have a look here, you can see these two little slots. If those are parallel with your housing here, it'll go right in. But the reason you have to do that is this guy needs to align down inside of here. Let's get the cradle shifter rotated out of the way. Rotate this in, down, and around. Line our little dot up on the top. Ignore this one. And make sure the back is parallel. And right there should be a fit. So we can grab our the lower half of this thing, put it on for a test fit, make sure everything's okay. If this isn't aligned correctly, the gears I mean, this won't seat flush. If it seats flush, you're okay. You don't want to use the screws to force it in. So that looks like it's sitting perfectly. So we're going to leave those where they sit and install the spaghetti seal onto this. I have the skeg here propped up in my hardware vise just to hold it for me while I do this. Now if I wasn't trying to record this as I went, I wouldn't worry about doing this. So we're going to install a spaghetti seal. First thing we need to do is put the Permatex in and around it. And then just kind of spread it out. You don't want it globbing up in some areas and then none in others. Now, one nice thing is how tacky this stuff is. I'll show you why that's nice in a second. This spaghetti seal is way too long. So you want to have it sticking out a little more than it needs to. But you just start putting the spaghetti seal in. Now see how much longer it is? So what we do is we get our scissors and just trim a hair of it off. Well, not a hair, quite a bit actually. And they were sticking out, I don't know, 16 to 32nd of an inch on each side. But as we install it, it'll force itself back and everything will seal just fine. So now we're going to go ahead and install that back onto the other half. Well, while we're here, might as well put a little on both sides just to make sure we're going to get a nice seal. But again, gasket sealing compound or anything pretty much works fine. One thing you will want to do is dab in the corners. Our spaghetti seal goes right about in there, so that'll help make sure everything's going to seal on that end. Let's kind of push it in a little. Now we install our second half, like so. You'll be able to tell if the spaghetti seal moved at all, which I got lucky and it didn't. Now we need to install the pivot pin. Apparently I got really lucky and it went right in right there. So we know that's where it needs to be. But what I didn't do was install the thread locker, or the anti-seize, excuse me. Don't use thread locker. So what I'm going to do is put a little in there. Put the pin back in and get it started. Now, I'm going to put anti-seize on every one of these bolts. If you ever take it apart again, you'll be glad you did this. Alright, all screws are in. Now when you tighten this down, what you don't want to do is go in any sequence. So you don't want to start here and then work your way around. Probably the best, it's much like you would have had on a car or something. Do the middle and work your way out. Sorry for the shakes. The camera is suspended above a drywall T-square with a cell phone zip tied to it. So I did those two. Again, they're not tight, they're just snug in there. I'll tighten them down after I'm done recording. I'll work over to that one, go to the opposite side, do this one. Then I'm going to go here and finish off with that one. Alright, the gear case is almost back together. All the bolts are nice and snug, of course according to proper torque specs. I went ahead and installed the shift rod connector. That way I have a way to grab onto it. I'll show you why in a second. So, for the drive shaft, it's not easy to spin by hand, especially with the new impeller and new seals. So what you can do is get a 12mm socket, or wrench rather, and it fits on there pretty nicely, and you can use that to spin the drive shaft. So you just want to check for smooth operation, make sure you didn't mess anything up before you put this on. It's in forward gear right now, I believe. As you can see, that prop shaft is spinning. I don't hear any weird grinding or noises or feel any resistance in the any resistance changes in the drive shaft, which means we're pretty good with the forward gear. Then shift it into, well, that hit reverse, I think, maybe not. Might be neutral, so neutral should be right there. Yep, so we're neutral. So we'll start in reverse, hit reverse, and she starts going backwards. But again, don't feel anything weird. Feels good. Feels like it's rotating smoothly and properly, and it's not making any weird noises. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the bottom is okay. But we'll do some more tests before we're done. So the only parts we have left over now are these guys inside of our seal kit. So when you remove the drain screws, they didn't come with the little rubber plastic seals. So we just got to pry those out, clean up the area, and put them back in. Sometimes you'll come across a motor and you'll find that two of these are stuck inside of here. That's because somebody else didn't notice that they were wedged in there. Happens all the time. There's one out. The second one's out. So we'll put these on. Like so. And we'll just kind of clean out our holes a little bit. I already did the tap and die down these, so I'm good there. Just want to get any oil or residue or gunk or anything out of the inside. Inside lip, I mean. Alright. Let's go ahead and find where I put those. And looks good. So now what I'm going to do is fill it full of oil. I'm going to go stick it in a bucket of water, hook it up to the drill, make sure the water pump pumps okay, and make sure everything's working right. But I'm fairly certain of not going to have any more issues, so you can pretty much classify this as done. Well, lower unit was tested, worked perfectly fine. I went ahead and cleaned all the greasy fingerprints and everything off the side. So overall, a nice, good lower unit. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment area. And if you like this video, please subscribe. I have 2 subscribers right now, and I'm going to need some more than that. So, have a good one.